Folks, there's a reason why you need to do your own research regarding people that are involved in politics. And I can't not say more forcefully, you need to know the people that are actually behind a lot of the things that are going on. Now, I think pretty much everybody knows the name George Soros. George Soros is a billionaire that was reportedly behind the founding and funding of the Black Lives Matter movement. That's not true, as the Black Lives Matter movement was founded directly behind the murder of Trayvon Martin. And the only affiliation that has ever been found and confirmed is that two people, two black women, that worked in a George Soros company picked up the flag because of the murder in Ferguson, Missouri. The far right obviously did their homework and investigated the two women and found out that they worked for a company owned by George Soros. So quite naturally, they tried to link George Soros to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a lie and has been debunked. Okay, unfortunately for us, the left has not done its homework until today on the people that are running or funding far-right organizations such as Breitbart. A name you probably need to research for yourself is the name Robert Murcer. Robert Murcer was the key funder for people like Ted Cruz. Robert Murcer is also one of the main campaign funders for Donald Trump. Okay, there's a lot of campaign funders out there. You know, people give, millions of dollars. You got the guy in Nevada, I think Adelson is his name, and he was the principal funder for Newt Gingrich 4 years ago and his attempt to run for the presidency. Adelson was the only thing that kept Gingrich alive for as long as Gingrich was alive in the primaries. And then when it became obvious that Gingrich wasn't going to get there, Adelson switched his funding into Romney. Okay, but again, your money, you do what you want with your money. But the American people have the right to know what your positions are and what are the causes that you support. Well, Robert Murcer is the principal, primary funder for Breitbart. Who works for Breitbart or did work for Breitbart? Steve Bannon was the principal mover and shaker in Breitbart. He became the CEO of the Trump campaign. There was a super PAC that was formed, and the principal funder of that super PAC was, again, Robert Murcer. Who worked for Robert Murcer in that super PAC? Kellyanne Conway. She came over to become the campaign manager for Donald Trump. Who took her place at that super PAC? David Bossie. David Bossie has been a Clinton hater since the year of the flood. And in prior years, he had been hired to dig up dirt on the Clintons, and his tactics were so toxic that the people and campaigns that hired him had to finally fire him. And he was super close to being prosecuted when he left his position. With all that being said, you have Peter Schweizer, who wrote a book called Clinton Cash. Mr. Murcer loved that book so much that he in turn funded that book being turned into a movie. Now, that movie is called Clinton Cash. And the movie, for the most part, all of the facts and figures as far as their need to out the Clintons, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, has been debunked. Okay, this story goes very, very deep. And I'm going to now play the clip that I saw last night from the Rachel Maddow show. And it brings up some super disturbing points. I'll comment on those points at the end of the video from Rachel Maddow.
Donald Trump's largest donor is this guy. His name is Robert Murcer. He's a hedge fund zillionaire and a Republican activist. Robert Murcer and his family have put more money into the effort to elect Donald Trump president than anybody else in the country. In this election cycle, one of the ways Robert Murcer spent his money was by funding one of the many Republican super PACs that played a role during the primary process this year. Robert Murcer funded his own super PAC, and the person he put in charge of running it was Kellyanne Conway, who you know. She's now very famous, very widely recognized as the campaign manager for the Donald Trump campaign. When Kellyanne Conway got that job, when she became Donald Trump's campaign manager, she had to quit her old job running the Robert Murcer super PAC. So then the Mercers had to replace her. The guy they hired to replace her, the guy they hired to run their super PAC once Kellyanne Conway left to go to the Trump campaign, was this guy. His name is David Bossie. But very shortly after they put him in charge of their super PAC, he also left the Murcer family super PAC to go work for the Trump campaign, just like Kellyanne Conway did. He became the deputy campaign manager to Kellyanne Conway. Robert Murcer is also reportedly the principal funder of Breitbart.com. Breitbart.com is a website that's on kind of a ragged, slightly unnerving edge of the conservative media, depending on where you're coming from. They've been around for a while, but if you want a little flavor of what Breitbart.com is like in the conservative media universe, Breitbart.com is these guys. Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. Breitbart famously called conservative commentator Bill Kristol a renegade Jew for the crime of not supporting Donald Trump. After the massacre at a black church in Charleston, South Carolina, where 9 black churchgoers were killed in cold blood by a white supremacist who fetishized the Confederate flag, Breitbart.com responded to that massacre with this. Hoist it high and proud, the Confederate flag proclaims a glorious heritage. The Breitbart.com editors are also seemingly encouraged to make as big a splash online as they can. One of their editors, very famously, was banned from Twitter altogether after he led an online campaign of racist and sexist abuse against the comedian Leslie Jones. In general, Breitbart's whole take on the Ghostbusters movie that featured Leslie Jones was that it shouldn't have been called Ghostbusters, it should have been called Weight Watchers. That's what Breitbart's like. When Donald Trump said that if he is elected president, he'll ban all Muslims from the United States, that struck most people not just as obscene, but also kind of obscure, right? Where'd that come from? It just seemed like such a nutty idea. Where would somebody even get that idea if they were going to propose that in a political campaign? Turns out that's not a nutty idea at Breitbart.com. You look at their online footprint and it's like, yeah, oh, hashtag deport all Muslims. Not just you can't come here if you're a Muslim, but if you're a Muslim here already, we'll find you, round you up, and deport you. Immigration is terrorism forever until you're conquered. Close the borders. No immigration whatsoever. British settlers and their descendants built civilization. Indians never bothered to build more than a few teepees. Slaves built the country as much as cows built McDonald's.
All right, there were a couple of other quotes from Katie McHugh. I did a story on her, and I'm not even going to go into what a racist she is, but let me read the last two that Rachel's not going to cover. Enough of hatred, intolerance, violent rhetoric. It's time to deport all Muslims from Western nations. And another one she did, immigration is a rape culture. Immigration is terrorism forever until you're conquered. Close the borders and expel the invaders. Hashtag pray for, looks like Nice. You know, we talk about white men being racist, but some of these white women, they stretch the envelope on racism as well.
This is Breitbart.com. Notice, see the word slaves has scare quotes around it? Like they weren't really slaves. So that's a little flavor. That's Breitbart.com. Donald Trump's biggest donor, Robert Murcer, is also reportedly the main funder of Breitbart.com. The head of Breitbart.com took leave from that publication. At the same time, Kellyanne Conway came over from the Murcer Super PAC to become campaign manager. He took leave from Breitbart at the same time because the two of them, at the same time, were installed at the top of the masthead for the Trump campaign. At the same time Kellyanne Conway from the Murcer Super PAC became campaign manager, the head of Breitbart.com became the campaign CEO. So from two Murcer-funded outfits came the campaign manager and the campaign CEO. From Breitbart.com and from the Murcer Super PAC. I should also mention the next name down the masthead, the deputy campaign manager, also used to run that Super PAC funded by the Murcer family. So you're getting the sense, right? It's one thing to like connect disparate dots. In this case, the dots are like here, here, and here. It's like, this is a very tight-knit thing. This is an orderly thing to understand. Robert Murcer and the Murcer family and the Trump campaign. Robert Murcer and the Murcer family also fund something that's called the Government Accountability Institute. And that sounds good, right? It sounds like a kind of a generic good government thing. It's not a generic good government thing. It's a right-wing activist group that is run by the head of Breitbart.com, the guy who's now running the Trump campaign. It's also run by this person.
Okay, in case you're not familiar with that person, that person's name is Peter Schweizer, and he's the person who wrote the derogatory book turned into a movie by Robert Murcer called Clinton Cash. So I'm going to stop it here because I'm going to do a separate video on this guy, the book he did, and the far-reaching fallout that has occurred. But think about this. You have a billionaire who's funding all of these white supremacists, I'm not calling them right-wing, white supremacist groups that's got his hooks into not only Ted Cruz, which I could not stand, still can't, but into Donald Trump, who may be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Now, I don't think he's going to get elected, but there's always that possibility. So I will say that white supremacy is making a strong bid to be able to control the highest reaches of power within this country. So for all of you George Soros blah 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 fans, take a look at Robert Murcer and his connections into what's going on in our country today and who's funding these white nationalist, white supremacist groups, and what are their motives.